God, here we go. I need more water. Yeah, more water.
My mouth is parched.
Okay. Stewie, are we good to go? We're good to go. All right, I'm gonna take a sip of water and then I'm gonna take a deep breath. Oh, we're going middle shot here.
Middle shot.
All right. Hey now!
Hey-o!
Become the... Fucked up already.
You already fucked it up.
All right,
it's
I'm gonna
fine.
start again. It's like, well, how am I gonna start? We're off to a good start,
I
right?
know, it's fine. It's gonna be fine.
All right, start again. Hey now!
Hey now!
Building men, become the strongest version of yourself, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, and physically. Anthony Miralda, let's cheers, brother.
We're doing it.
We're doing this.
We're doing it.
So we are in a studio. We're recording here from a studio. This is 1 year to the day of the first Building Men episode, and we have been on this long journey over the last probably a year and a half since we came up with this idea. It's been a year since our first episode. And I just wanted to congratulate you as part of this journey and just say, you know, I'm happy that you're a part of this. This is awesome.
Yeah, it's been a long ride, to say the least. And we've had some crazy ups and downs. We had no idea what the hell we were doing when we first started. It was definitely very interesting, but it's amazing to see the transition from where we started to where we are now. Like, all the pieces were there. We just didn't have a niche. We didn't know who we were going after. We didn't know what our true purpose was from this whole thing that we were doing. But I feel like we're starting to narrow it down a little bit, and look at us. Look at this, you know?
I
Look at
always
us.
thought that there was this moment where you know that you made it when you have a mug in front of you. When you're at the table and there's a
when
mug
there's really
here.
nothing in it.
Yeah, there's water in the mug.
I've been fake sipping. Well, mine's done already.
You're done.
I already finished my my water. It's
So my mug is Carpe Diem, seize the day. Your mug is...
an alpaca with glasses and a bow tie. So I think that's relevant because I don't know if any of you know, but I had a short modeling career, and it was with an alpaca for a wedding photo shoot. So you can find that online. Google me, Anthony Miralda, alpaca. It's good
That
stuff.
comes up. And
Yeah.
so it wasn't you with an alpaca because that's illegal in many states.
That's what you see, but there's workarounds. Trust me.
there's ways
You
to
could
get
figure
around
out-
that
yeah,
stuff.
Yeah. So long story short, I have an alpaca in my apartment. We're living together. It's not a good relationship.
Complicated.
Yes, we're struggling right now. We're getting some counseling, but it's fine. It's fine. Everything's fine.
So I just thought of something. How about this? Every episode that we do in studio, we'll bring different mugs with us. Instead of having the same mug for every single time, we'll bring in different mugs. That'll be part of our, like a little nuance.
A little
Right?
nuance,
That's
right?
a new
It's
word
like
that
a
you've learned.
small difference between stuff.
Yeah, so if you're interested in having your mug as part of our journey, reach out to us on Building Men. We'd be happy to sport your mug here when we
Yeah.
come to the studio. A little nuance thing that we'll do differently every single time.
Absolutely, I agree. Well, that's, this is a big thing because now we have to have different mugs every single time.
I just set that up without talking to you about it.
I know. I wish this is where the transparency and communication thing comes into play, and I just,
Well, we're going to talk about the difference, like the idea of order and chaos, the balance between the two at some point during our journey today. But what I wanted to do was start off with how we got to this point. I remember very vividly, I was in my car and I was on the phone with you talking about working together in some capacity.
Yeah.
It was in that spot in my life where I felt really lost and not knowing where I was going, the direction I was going. And we had a conversation about the idea of working together in some capacity.
Yeah.
We didn't know what it was going to look like, sound like, feel like. We really didn't have an idea about what it was going to be. So we started throwing different ideas out. And we started with that infinity theory, infinity project.
Right.
We like the idea of the logo of the infinity sign, where there was not a start or finish. It was kind of free flowing. And do you remember we went out one night around you for a couple beverages, and we started just to talk initially about what it was going to be, like what this journey would
what
be
the
on.
idea of it was, right? Yeah. We started out, and it was like, again, it was just in the like infancy stages of the whole thing, trying to get an idea of what our goal was from this whole thing. And so it was cool, and we had like we were pretty organized to start. You did most of the back end stuff, but then we went out to the bar, and after we had a couple drinks, it just kind of turned
It
into
deteriorated quickly.
yes, and that's usually ends up happening where it kind of spirals out of control when we get on a rant. And I think we just started talking about pet peeves, or
Right.
things that kind of like piss us off essentially that people do. And do you remember which ones I mean, there was one specifically that really grinded your gears.
So as I think back to it, a couple that I can recall. One was using umbrellas.
Right. And again, we're talking from a man's point of view
right.
here.
As like men using umbrellas, and I said, to me, I don't like to use an umbrella. I would rather get wet. It strikes me as something non-masculine to use an umbrella,
Right.
and I understand it's ridiculous.
I get what it does. The purpose of it is amazing. It's a beautiful thing, but there is no way to look masculine holding an umbrella when you're walking. That is, unless like you have the umbrella and you bring it out and you have your your significant other next to you and it's like okay, and maybe you're getting a little wet, but they're not getting wet at all. But if you're walking solo down the street and you got an umbrella on, or you're holding an umbrella, I'll get wet. I accept the fact of what I'm getting myself into, and I'm just gonna be wet.
That was one of the things that we talked about, and who knows? That was at that moment I was thinking that's not something. I don't need an umbrella, and I know it is. That's mine that I'm dealing with.
And I agree with that. I did disagree with your other one though, with scarves. You're against scarves.
I'm not a fan of men wearing scarves. Listen, again, it's my shit. That's my thing that I'm dealing with. But you rock a scarf.
Absolutely. I think scarves. But again, I don't rock it because my neck is cold. I feel like if you're gonna go for that, just wear a turtleneck, because I think turtlenecks are immaculate. Because you've worn turtlenecks several times before.
It's been a while. It's been
a
minute
like
since I wore a turtleneck.
a cream turtleneck. But yeah, the scarf, I'm all in with like a good hat, a scarf. You had a watch in there. You have some nice accessories. Like you are looking fabulous, to say the least.
And now that the audience knows you, that may or may not include pants.
Yeah, who knows? Listen, there's so many avenues you could go down when you have a scarf on. It's amazing. It's truly a outfit enhancer, and I stand by that. So
we had umbrellas. We talked about scarves. Another thing that we talked about was just, again, it sounds so antiquated and archaic thinking about it, but just even using, like when you see men putting on chapstick, it's just something to me that it bothers me.
Yep.
Maybe not the tube of chapstick as much as like there's like a little tin of chapstick, and you put your pinky into it and you smear it on your lips.
Just slowly, ever so gently, just sort of like rub it, and then you do like at the end and kind of push them together. You know what you do if you're gonna do that? Because chapstick works. It's great.
Absolutely.
Do that somewhere that not many people can see you. I don't know. There's no way to do that. And again, you do the whole lip purse thing, and then you get an umbrella and you go outside. And I'm like, come on.
And you've whipped a scarf on. Were there any other things that we talked about then? I don't remember. And again, the conversation started in a way we were like,
but I guess after you have like
mentally,
4 IPAs later, then all of a sudden I was like, what the hell? And we wrote all of it down in a note on our notes on our phone. And we looked at it the next day, and I was like, what the fuck
what did we do? How did we get to this point?
Why is this happening? But yeah, that was kind of where it all started there. And yeah, so now.
And listen, as I look back and as I reflect on it, I guess I've come to the point now, maybe it's masculine just to be authentically you and not to give a shit what other people think about putting on chapstick with an umbrella and wrapping a scarf around your neck.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong. Again, this is our opinions. Yeah. It's not like this is the capital T truth. You can own all of this stuff, and if you do, God bless you. And I'm sure there's a lot of people out there who are way, manlier than us, whatever way you want to look at it, and they do all that stuff, and that's great. That's fantastic.
So that's where it started. And we looked at these notes the next day, and we were thinking, we woke up, we're like, we killed it last night.
Yeah.
We have a whole plan
can't
in
wait
place.
to see.
And we look at the notes, and it's like, you can't sit down when you're peeing.
And it was like, huh. Which, so, might I add, if it's at night, and it's in the middle of the night, and you're really tired, and you don't want to lose that, the old delta waves that you're in there from your sleep, and you want to sit down, I'm okay with that. But if it's like middle of the day, and you decide to sit down when you go to the bathroom, I'm not okay with that. Middle of the night, I give it a pass. I don't know how you feel about that.
I'm a stand-up guy.
Okay.
Listen, I just feel like that might be my thing, but you're relinquishing that the ability. As men, we have the ability to pee standing
and I'm
up,
sure
and we're going to.
Women would look at us and be like, fuck you. I want to be able to, I would love to be able to go in a bush and be able to control exactly anywhere the hell I want to go.
Put up on the bumper of a car and have at
exactly. Take a kneel at a giant stadium.
I'll tell you what,
the stadium, like you did.
Quick divergence here is taking a knee that's a big move.
You taught me that when
taking
I was like
a knee, that's a
12
big
years
move.
old. Yeah.
When you have to, especially if you're in a parking lot after a game or something like that, taking a knee.
You go
is a
next
big
to
one.
the tire and act like you're checking the tire pressure.
You're checking the pressure, and you're just watering the rim right there. All right, so we start there, right? That's where our journey starts.
Yep.
So you knew that I ran the Building Men program as a principal for years. And I always wanted to do something with the program, and I said, why don't we talk about it a little bit? So now fast forward, as we're trying to come up with some ideas, and we revisit this infinity theory idea where it's this idea of how everything kind of works in unison together, mental, spiritual, emotional, physical. And we started the Building Men podcast. And initially it was me doing the podcast solo, which I didn't like. I felt like I had to do it. There was this sense of, I need to get this message out, and I would sit in front of my computer with a microphone and stare at the screen and get nervous and talk. And you came on a couple of those episodes initially, and it felt really, really awkward. It wasn't until you and I started getting into this idea of like, okay, let's set it up almost like an interview kind of thing, where maybe I'm talking to some guests, maybe you're talking to some guests, and then we're talking to each other. It's really come full circle. And so a year into it now, we have this idea, we're honing in, we're dialing in, as Ian Lobos would say.
Right.
We're dialing in on where we feel our mission is taking us right now.
Yeah.
So now we're in this unbelievable space. We're in a studio, and we're able to BS in a way. We're going to talk about a couple topics on this journey. But I just wanted to have a little time to reminisce about how we got to where we are. Yeah.
And you remember, so the only time that we've actually been in person when we've done a interview was the first one.
We did two where we were together.
What was the second
we
one?
We did the pillars of fitness, and then it was intentional discomfort.
Oh, that's right. In that one, I was hammered. Yeah.
Hammered.
Yeah. And you went. I remember you went to the bathroom, and I was still describing like leaving the apartment, and you were like, "Dude, like, what are you doing?" And I'm just like, "So anyway." But yeah, that's right. So otherwise, we haven't really had a discussion that wasn't very scripted and very, it was hard for us to do it before we were comfortable with it. So this is the first time. It feels good to be back.
Yeah, it's good to be back.
It feels nice to look at you and see your sweaty face.
Am I sweaty?
No, you're just
a little
shiny, a little glazed. That's fine. It looks great. You look great.
180 degrees outside right now. It's been hot, but. So we already got to talking about the weather 10 minutes in, huh?
God, that's pathetic.
That's
I know.
Horrible. But when you think about how we've come to where we are now, we started doing them on Zoom as well.
Yeah.
And thinking back to that first time that we talked on Zoom, I want to say it was like episode 41, 42, something like that.
Yeah.
Talk on Zoom. And you were at my house.
Yeah.
So I was in the sunroom of my house, and you were upstairs in Denny's room on Zoom. And I just said, I'm going to interview you. Let's talk about your journey. And you were really introspective about your journey with anxiety and how that impacted you. And you had a coffee mug full of tequila.
Yeah. Yes, I did. And that helped. Because again, I was still nervous. I was still worried about it because that was the first time since, that you interviewed me like that, where we had a conversation just about me or I was on the podcast.
Yeah.
And all the other times I was freaking out and we weren't going to cut it up. You weren't chopping it up anymore. So I knew that I had to perform in that moment. So I was worried, I was nervous, and I was talking about myself and talking about things that not many people know about me and that are showing my true colors. But it was awesome. That was very liberating for me that I got through that. And then all the other ones made it was easier and easier and easier. And I've screwed up along the way, but who cares? It's just like all we want to do is just keep content out,
Yes.
keep talking, and we'll keep getting better at it the more that we do it.
And think about even that night as we were going through, we started off and you could tell how anxious you were. And now we're sitting in a studio, you had H2O.
Yeah, I don't even, there's not even
tequila.
alcohol in here. There is no alcohol in this. This is water. And yeah, it's crazy.
So when you think about the journey that you've been on over the course of the last, even you over the last year and over the last 2-3 months, if I were to go back and tell you a year ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, that you would be sitting in a studio doing a show basically, you would say you're crazy.
I was like, there's no way I would be able to. I remember you told me that there was a chance that we would come in here. And already I was like, how can I get out of this? Or how can there's no way I'm going to be able to do this. Already my negative self-talk was telling me that it would be impossible for me to do that without some sort of substance or a way for me to get through it. And it's just crazy because I wasn't worried at all. I'm just like, it's going to be fun. Who cares? Doesn't matter at all. And I feel like that's what people like about what we do is we screw up so much. And there's so much that we do it shows who we really are and that we're not perfect and we're human beings and we're not going to throw all these filters on and cut it up, even though I do that on the food stuff, but it's fine. They look way better, so that's okay.
So we posted something yesterday you posted something on Instagram about, it was like a morning workout routine, firing up the wagon. And somebody thought that was me, and they're like, wow, you're so flexible.
Yeah, no, you're not.
Like,
yeah, I want you to do that same one, and let's see what that looks like.
Yeah, like we should do like a spoon. It's like those dad noises.
Just act like you're me in there.
It's like, we all hear it.
Yeah.
We all hear it. But the idea of this journey that we've been on with Building Men, what we're trying to do is help people understand that we're all on this journey. There's not this static point in our lives. We might find ourselves here, but it's continuous. It's this idea of a growth mindset. And we are on this growth mindset journey. We are on this journey that we're growing individually and then together through Building Men, that what we're trying to do is help other people understand that you're not in this set spot in your life. You are in this moment on the course of this longer journey, that you are in control of this larger part of your life, this larger journey. So when we started today, we started to talk a little bit about the difference or the balance between order and chaos. So let's just use this journey even as a segue into that topic of order and chaos. So when you think of order, like you think of, there's the need for order in our lives. And I'll just dive a little deep into a personal part of my journey. Was a year and a half ago, 14 months ago, as I was going through the lowest part of my life. I was going through a divorce. My job situation was less than ideal. I wasn't sure where I would be living after going through divorce. There were so many variables that were out there that I wasn't quite sure what was going on. I let my health slip. I just wasn't stable mentally. There were so many things that were going on. So what I did was I started with the journey of daily routines, rituals, habits that I started to implement that helped me recreate who I was and gave me this semblance of order in my life. So I mentioned it on the podcast many times before. It would be the time that I would wake up in the morning, meditation, journaling, physical fitness type things, what I was eating, less alcohol in my life. And so what I did was I needed to take, I was going through a ton of chaos at the time. Everything in my life seemed like it was shifting in a million different ways. I needed to create some semblance of order in my life. And the way that I did that was doing these daily things every single day habitually.
Yeah.
It became to the point where I ate the same exact thing every single day. I mean, I wouldn't eat anything until after 12 every day. I needed to eat. You can probably rattle through the things that I needed to eat every day.
Yeah, I could name on, I know exactly. So you would have avocado, you would have eggs, you would have spinach, you would have dates, and you would have dried mangoes, and then you would have some sort of like a ground beef or something at night.
Or chicken.
Or chicken, and then sweet potatoes. I don't know if I said that already, but
and blueberries and macadamia nuts.
blueberries, macadamia nuts, and that was it. Those were all the foods that you would eat consistently. But I think that at that time you needed that full shift to the next.
Yes.
You needed to go from complete chaos, anarchy. You have no idea where your life is. Nothing is in line. Nothing is ordered. And to that, where it's like you have this set thing that you're doing every single day consistently. And that's what almost saved you in that moment, to show like, I can take control of my life.
And so going through that, so needing those things, and just in the larger societal aspect of life, we do need order in the world. We need, there needs to be a system in the grocery store, where things are lined up, how you pay for things, stoplights.
Yeah.
There needs to be some kind of a government structure that provides a level of semblance and order in our life. We need those things that will help us understand. We need some type of a schedule. We need to have those things that can help lock us in place. Mm-hmm. Conversely, it can't just be that. It
Right.
can't just be our lives are so based on, listen, in front of me right now, I have a high performance planner. Right. It's by Brendan Burchard, and it's something that I use every single day. I start and I go through this ritualistic thing of writing down my goal for the day. What are my priorities? I schedule out everything that I'm doing. It's pretty rigid. Mm-hmm. It's pretty structured, pretty rigid. And there would be days that I didn't fill this out, and I would feel bad at the end of the day because I didn't perform this ritualistic task of whatever. And then you reflect again at the end of the night, which at the time in my life was so important for me to be able to go through. So there's a really positive part of having that structure and order. But when it gets too much, think about societies and governments have been overthrown because people feel like they can't be themselves. Right. People feel like they are put into this box and like they are just kind of part of this machine, mm-hmm. and they don't have any individuality. They don't have any
There's no
sense
autonomy
of
in it.
autonomy.
There's no sense of self. There's no individualistic way. I don't know.
Keep going. I love this. I love the riff here. Individualization. But yeah, and once you take that away from people, then they just feel like you're dictating what their life is going to be, right? And again, this planner, I think, was a savior for you. But it's also something that you should feel okay and not shame yourself when you feel the need to veer off course a little bit from it. Because people get so worked up in this one moment, and that thing itself, that's what allows you to be you. You know what I mean? And it's not. And I think after you have that order on the total end of the spectrum, right? Once you have complete order in your life and everything is controlled, then it's a little easier to start kind of veering off. I feel like if you start with order and then start to throw in chaos, it makes it easier, versus the other way around. It's kind of hard if you're chaotic and then trying to throw in order when your whole life is in shambles and stuff. Granted, that just happens from time to time, but I think that's important to have both those. And when I went from chaos and I needed to jam order in, and so I needed to go through that experience over the course of several months to regain some level where I felt like I was in control of things that were happening in my life. I recently interviewed a gentleman on the podcast, and his name is Brandon Robinson. Mm-hmm. He wrote a book, and the book was titled "When Words Won't Form, My Pen Speaks."
Yeah.
And his journey, he grew up in Detroit on the streets, and he felt like because he was living in this really, really difficult area, this challenging spot, he couldn't be himself. He said, I wanted to, write and sculpt and paint and be in the glee club in school. He said, but if I did that, if I was that me, I would have got my ass kicked. I couldn't walk outside. He said, I didn't smile for the first 12 years of my life because I felt like I needed to be hard. And we did this deep dive into like how he got to where he was, and he's been through some really challenging situations. Mm-hmm. And so I asked him, I said, so when you're going through the process, how do you go about your day? What are your ritualistic things? What are your habits that you do every single day? And he's like, none.
Yeah.
And it kind of started me a little bit. I'm like, no, what time do you wake up? What are you eating on a regular basis? What is your fitness like? How do you do those things? He's like, man, I just kind of flow. You know, I don't need to have a book or a schedule locking me in. He goes, he's like, I'm creative, I'm an artist. He's like, that puts me in this space where I don't feel good about myself. I don't like that. And that's when I started to think, okay, I went from one extreme all the way to the other. And now I'm like, maybe there needs to be a balance between the two. Even thinking about like a yin and a yang.
Yeah.
The balance between
polarities between the two. Yeah.
And when you think about masculine and feminine energy, like the masculine energy is a more order-filled energy, and the feminine energy is the more of the chaotic. And chaos, I don't mean for chaos to sound like it's a negative.
Right.
Chaos in moderation can be a great thing, as is order.
They're both needed, right? The balance is what we need. It's not the sense of one. It's not one is better than the other. If you're over balance, or you have too much of one versus too much of the other, it's going to be negative, right? You don't want that. You want to find that middle ground, that middle piece, that kind of that carries over. And because this is from Jordan Peterson, right?
Yes.
So his Order and Chaos, and he starts out talking about masculine, feminine, and he goes, the way that you think about life in general, I think the most important thing we need to understand, the yin and the yang, is the order and the chaos. And he talks about, what I heard from that was, there was a gymnast who, I don't know if you heard this, but like the gymnast goes and does this phenomenal, like perfect routine. And clearly she put in like 50,000 hours of work, and it was so obvious, and the judges, everyone's going nuts and going crazy. And the judges give her a 9.8, 9.8, whatever, I don't know what it's out of, but like they give him like one of the highest scores. So the person to follow that, how do you follow a near perfect performance, right? So they go in, and what they did was they took a risk, right? They went and put their blood, sweat, and tears into that next thing, to where they went just on the edge of screwing up. If one thing went wrong, the whole routine would have been ruined, right? They weren't going for perfection. They were going for like, in all my chips in, I don't care, right? And that's the difference, because once you do that, now you're allowing yourself to be vulnerable, and people can kind of sense that, and you're putting yourself out there. You're right on the edge of chaos, where it's like it's going to get a little crazy, and if something goes nuts, and the crowd could sense that, you know what I mean? They could understand that this person was going all out on that. And that's how you beat that completely ordered person, is you flirt with the chaos a little bit in there, because you have the potential to fail. I feel like the ordered person doesn't really have the potential to fail, because their whole life is planned out.
Structure.
Everything. And like, that's not the way to, you can't avoid chaos. Chaos will happen. We can leave here and you can get hit by a bus, you know what I mean? And I'm like, oh, well, this didn't have this in my high performance planner. Wait a minute.
I didn't plan for the number 7 Greyhound to whip through.
Right, exactly. So it's just something that you need to be in balance with at all times.
So the idea of chaos now, so we talked a little bit about order, the idea of chaos, it can be, you know, not waking up to a schedule. It could be driving down the road, and instead of taking a left-hand turn, taking a right-hand turn to explore something new. It's definitely taking a risk in life. Yeah. I talked before on different podcasts about, as people are on their deathbed, they're thinking about things that they wish they had more of in their life, or they did, and it was, you know, making sure that they spend more time with family and really value those relationships, and not spend so much time working, but spend more time with people that you love. That doesn't have anything in it.
I'm just, there was a little bit left. It's more just like the droplets. Just let me do this.
Listen, you called it out that there was nothing in it.
I feel like I'm in like Peter Pan right now. You know, when they're with, remember when they're all eating and there's nothing in there?
And then they believe that it's there.
In it. So my belief system is allowing me to have a bunch of water.
You want to sip of mine?
Yeah, can we switch? You do have stuff in there.
Yeah, I do.
Nice.
That was chaotic. Right, that wasn't normal. I didn't know I was.
I didn't know you were going to call me out for not having anything in there. I guess I shouldn't have mentioned it when we first got in.
Listen, we're rolling with it. So there's that. Okay, you want to build those relationships, and you don't want to spend all your time working. You want to spend time with loved ones. One of them was to do something to leave a legacy, and one was to take more risks in life, to step outside of that comfort zone area. And when you think of chaos, think of it as, you know, the thing that gets your heart beating in a little bit of a way where you're like, I like this feeling. Yeah. Some people absolutely hate it, but I want just to convey the idea that It's okay when your heart beats a little bit and it puts you outside of that spot where you need the high performance planner. You need to have blueberries and macadamia nuts at 12 p.m. every freaking day. Like, it's okay to be like, you know what? It was my daughter's birthday last night. Typically, I don't eat sweets, right? I don't have sweets. So
You crushed a cake.
I had some ice cream cake last night.
All right.
I had a piece of ice cream cake, and then I dug in at the core of the ice cream cake. It was not in my schedule for the day. It was a little bit chaotic. But to be in that spot where, you know, think about kids when you're going on adventures, when you're doing something that you step out of that comfort zone and you're able to be in this space that's not structured and there's not this order. It's this way of like kind of flowing and being.
Yes, just being in that moment and being curious and being filled with wonder, you know, and like we lost that because our whole thing. So like in the next hour, I know what I'm going to do. And then at 1 o'clock I have this, and then at 3 o'clock I have this and this and this and this, versus just kind of like going with the flow. And that's why if you have that rigid 9 to 5 schedule in your life, because some people have that and there's just no way out of that. This is where you go on a trip and have no plan, no itinerary. You know, you don't know what you're going to do when you go on the trip. That's a way to schedule it out, but then you just toss your hands up and say, screw it, let's just see what happens. You know, and the other thing I think about is like, I think having that polarity between the two is so important, because like the reason why our successes bring so much joy to us, because there was that big risk, like because there was that chance of failure when we do that. If there wasn't a chance of failure, it doesn't make you don't have the joy of actually, you know, the win that you get from it. Like when I put myself out there and do a speech or talk in public, I feel so good after, because my expectations, how scared I was beforehand, because of the risks that I took. That's what made it special. If I thought in my head everything's going to be fine and I didn't give a crap about it, it wouldn't matter. The reward after wouldn't be a reward. Too much of a good thing isn't a good thing anymore. Having that chance of failure or knowing what it's like to be at the bottom, it makes everything else better, because you have that, you know, the difference between the two in that.
And thinking about putting yourself in a spot where you're able to endure difficult situations. One of the things that a previous podcast I did was lessons that we learned from the roots of trees. Mm-hmm. It was that experiment in the biodome.
Oh yeah.
It was a biodome in Arizona where they created this unbelievably serene atmosphere for plants and vegetation to flourish, and it was perfect. Everything was exactly the way it should have been. The temperature was the right way. They got enough sun and the nutrients in the soil and the water. But what happened was the trees would grow to a certain height and they would fall over. And they would grow to a certain height and they would fall over, and the scientists were baffled why it was happening. And then they came to realize that they were falling over because their roots were really weak and fragile, because they didn't have fragile.
I think you could go either way.
Fragile. That's what I want to say.
You can say that.
Okay.
I'll say fragile.
Okay.
Fragile. Yeah.
Fragile.
Yes. I think it's Italian.
Right, it's Italian. Mm-hmm. The roots were fragile because they didn't endure enough wind and things that were pushing it to make them...
Forcing them to endure.
Yes.
Forcing them to change and adapt and be stronger in that sense. And we could go off on trees forever.
Forever. And so there was not... The trees that were growing to a certain height, they experienced no chaos at all. Mm-hmm. Everything was in this structure and order, and they grew to a certain way, but they were stunted at that point, and they would fall over because they didn't dig in deep. They didn't have to deal with chaos and that unknown situation, that discomfort that helped them. So they weren't successful in that way. So it was the need for chaos in our life. So it's really great to have order. I'm not in any way saying you don't need order in your life. You need to have a structure. You need to have, some type of a schedule. You need to be able to understand that I need to do this, this, and this. This is what I'm going to do to make a living. This is how I'm going to go. Maybe your vacations are scheduled out in a certain way. But leave space for that unknown. Leave space for that little bit of chaos that's where we live. That's the good times happen, not with a fucking high performance planner. Yeah. I'm not like, hey, man, I killed my HPP today. I did everything. Woo-hoo! I checked it off my list.
Yeah, I wrote down everything. Yeah. Is that really what you're going after? Or are you going after the experiences that it allows you to have, not that itself? And it, like, when you brought up the tree, there was I'm gonna butcher the study, but whatever, they did a study on these mice, and they just kept feeding them like dopamine. You know, they were giving them hits of dopamine, and every time the mouse would go up and it would hit this little thing, it would come down, and there would be whatever they were giving them, right? An injection of dopamine or something, and all of the mice ended up dying because they had no reason to live because they had so much dopamine and they were just getting flooded with dopamine constantly. And it just was pointless to even be alive because they just had everything they needed and they could just settle. And once they settled, that was it. They were done. And there was another thing I thought about too from this guy, Clark Keegley, which I told you about him before, but he talks about how like this kind of goes in within order and chaos. It's like having your GPS on, right? So you know where you're going, but you don't need to worry about that. That GPS is like, so you know your end goal, right? So you know where you want to go, but you could sit and enjoy the drive still because you have that GPS on. So like, you know the goal that you want from Building Men. Now let's enjoy the whole process, because as long as we could veer off course a little bit, it'll reroute whatever, we know the end place we want to go. We don't have to continuously think about it and dwell on it constantly and try and figure out every perfect plan to get there. It's there already. We know it's there, and we could just focus on what's in front of us.
So our first day in studio with the Building Men podcast, I wanted to just take a moment to just appreciate the journey that we've been on for, you know, over a year, almost a year and a half now throughout this whole process. Tell you that I'm proud of you for just sitting here drinking a fake water out of an alpaca mug, and tell you that it's been a pleasure going on this journey with you. It's been really, really tremendous, and thank you to the audience for listening. And the idea of balancing your life. We're all about balance here, right? Balancing your life between things that you need to do, that order, structure, reason, with the unknown, that chaotic piece a little bit. And it's okay when both things are happening, and that's where you'll truly be in harmony, is when both things are happening in unison and in synergy. So, Anthony, last words for the audience?
I'm excited to be here. This is awesome, you know. And again, I'm proud of myself. I'm proud of you. I'm proud of what we built together. I would have never thought this. I mean, granted, I think we're on to much bigger things, but just being here, it's like surreal, you know. It feels awesome. So yeah, I'm just happy.
And so Building Men, you can find us building.men on Instagram. Email buildingmencoach@gmail.com. There's a lot of cool stuff coming up with Building Men, a couple sponsorships that we will let you know about. Go a step further than you thought you could go today. DQ, we will see you later, my man. Take care. We'll see you next time on Building Men.
Building Men. There's a little bit in there.
All right, so that's our first episode, Greg.
Yeah. How long?
How'd I do? 30 minutes?